A mother said no. 14 hours later, she was gone. That is not a coincidence. That is a sequence. And today, you are going to see exactly how that sequence unfolded, documented, step by step, fact by fact. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old. She had lived in her Catalina foothills home in Tucson for decades. $1 million of property, a life fully built, a woman who knew her own mind. Weeks before she vanished, her daughter Annie came to her with a request. A loan. We do not know the amount. We do not know the reason. What we know is what Nancy said. No. If you have followed this case, subscribe to Against Crime TV right now. What the financial record shows next is something the headlines have not touched. That refusal has never been officially confirmed by law enforcement. The family has not denied it either. But here is what makes it matter. Nancy disappeared on February 1st. The last dinner she ever shared was with Annie and Annie's husband, Tommaso Cion. Tommaso drove her home that night. Nobody recorded that ride. No camera, no app, no witness. Just Tommaso's word. And then, for 14 hours, nobody from that household made a single call to check on an 84-year-old woman living alone 4 miles away. You need to sit with that. A mother refused her daughter. Hours later, she was gone. And the documented trail that connects those two events is what this video is entirely about. 8 months before Nancy disappeared, someone in that family signed a document that placed significant financial authority into one set of hands. And the timing is very hard to explain away. Before the dinner, before the drive home, before the silence. There was a paper trail, and it started 8 months earlier than anyone was paying attention. Let us follow the money. Nancy's home in the Catalina foothills sits at roughly $1 million. Annie and Tommaso's home sits at roughly $650,000. 4 miles apart. A $350,000 gap between mother and daughter. That gap alone proves nothing. Parents often hold more than their children. But when you are trying to understand why someone would target an elderly woman in her own home, the value of that property stops being background information. It becomes motive. Now here is the document you need to know about. In May of 2025, 8 months before Nancy vanished, Tommaso signed a durable power of attorney. He named Annie as his agent for all financial and property matters. Legal experts who reviewed it called it routine, standard paperwork for a real estate closing or mortgage refinance. Maybe that is exactly what it was. But the timing creates something. May 2025. Power of attorney signed. Weeks before January 31st, Annie reportedly asks Nancy for money. Nancy says no. January 31st, Nancy takes a documented Uber to Annie and Tommaso's house for dinner. That ride has timestamps. The driver cooperated with the FBI. Every detail of that trip to Annie's house sits on the record. The trip home does not. Tommaso drove Nancy back at around 9:50 p.m. No rideshare log, no camera footage, no independent witness. His account of walking her inside and watching that garage door close behind her stands completely alone. And then the silence started. Nancy was 84. She took vital medication every night at 10 p.m. She removed her hearing aids before bed. Without them, she could not hear a door, a voice, or a cry for help. No alarm system, no medical alert device, no overnight caregiver. Fixing every one of those security gaps costs less than $1 a day. The people who drove her home knew all of this. From the moment that garage door sealed shut until a church friend noticed an empty chair the next morning, nobody came. Nobody called. Nobody checked. The paper trail ends at that garage door, and from the moment it closed behind her, everything that happened next raises one question. Nobody in this case has answered, not once, not publicly. The documents answer the what, the timeline answers the when. But the 14 hours of silence after that garage door closed, that answers something far more uncomfortable. Think about what a normal family does. You drive your elderly mother home after dinner. You watch her go inside. And then, at minimum, you send one text, "Home safe. Good night." That is not extraordinary. That is just what people who care about each other do. That text never came. Not that night, not the next morning. Not once in 14 hours from a household 4 miles away that had just spent the evening with her. Nancy's pacemaker lost its signal at 2:28 a.m. Her own body was sending a distress signal into the void. Nobody was listening. At 12:03 p.m. on February 1st, Annie called 911 to report her mother missing. Now here is where this case takes a turn you need to pay close attention to. In Arizona, 911 calls are public record. On high-profile missing person cases, reporters pull those recordings within hours. They hit the news the same day. That is standard. That is routine. This recording has been sealed for over 3 months. 5 things stand out about that silence. No audio has been released despite Arizona's public records law. No transcript has surfaced from any source. No journalist has obtained even a partial summary. Retired detective Bob Gillian stated publicly, "The recording contains forensic details protected specifically for trial." He used the word trial. A 7-minute gap exists between the family's 11:56 a.m. arrival and the 12:03 p.m. call. 7 minutes at the home of a missing 84-year-old before anyone dialed for help. Gillian did not mince words. He said, "The world may not hear that call until a trial date is set." A trial. That word carries legal weight. It implies charges. It implies an arrest is coming. And consider this. NBC built a specific protocol for the Today Show. If a Nancy Guthrie update breaks during a live broadcast, Savannah leaves the set immediately. A backup anchor delivers the news. Networks do not build that infrastructure for cold cases. They build it when they expect an arrest to land in real time on national television. Drop your answer in the comments right now. What do you think is on that 911 tape? One retired detective says the world will not hear it until a trial begins. While that recording stays sealed, something else has been happening at Nancy's home. Something with no legal explanation. And the person whose car keeps appearing in those photos has not said a single word about it. The investigation knows what we know, and then it knows what we do not. What happened to Nancy's home while the case stayed open tells you exactly where law enforcement's attention has been pointed. Nancy Guthrie has not been declared dead. There is no death certificate, no probate has opened, no court has authorized the removal of a single item from her home. Her disappearance remains an active criminal investigation. So explain the boxes. Photos surfaced showing people loading personal items from Nancy's residence into waiting vehicles. Annie's Honda CR-V appears in those photos, parked directly outside. The removal of property is ongoing, and nobody in any official capacity has stepped forward to stop it. Then a report spread fast. Someone intends to move into Nancy's home. The response that cut through all the noise was blunt and specific. Someone who cannot pay their own property taxes. That has not been confirmed. It has not been denied. Now add this. Annie's CRV was seized by law enforcement and held for over 40 days of forensic analysis. 40 days is not a routine inspection. That is a biological trace evidence search. That is investigators looking for blood, DNA, and fibers with enough patience to dismantle every surface in that vehicle. Subscribe to Against Crime TV right now. The moment that DNA result surfaces, this channel breaks down exactly what it means for every person connected to this case. And here is what the DNA already shows. Genetic genealogist C.C. Moore assessed the biological material recovered from inside Nancy's home. Her finding: Nancy plus 2 unknown profiles. The individuals who left that material have no prior criminal record, no arrests, no convictions, clean records. Whoever entered that home lives a normal life, attends family dinners, signs legal paperwork, drives elderly women home at night. Tell me in the comments, do you think law enforcement has enough right now to make an arrest? Or is something else holding this back? 3 months. No arrest, a sealed recording, a car held for 40 days, a home being cleared before the owner is legally gone. The DNA sits in a lab right now, and when it speaks, someone's name gets attached to it. Every piece of this case points back to the same origin. One conversation, one refusal, and everything that followed. Pull back for a moment. This entire case begins with a private conversation between a mother and her daughter. A loan was requested. Nancy said no. And from that single moment of refusal, a sequence began that has not ended. You have seen the chain, the power of attorney, the final dinner, the undocumented ride home, 14 hours of silence, a sealed 911 call, a vehicle held 40 days for forensic testing, property removed without legal authority, 2 unknown DNA profiles with clean records. No single piece of that chain constitutes proof. This video has never claimed otherwise. But ask yourself the hardest version of the question. What does it mean that the last person to see Nancy alive was the husband of the daughter she refused? The answer is already inside a lab in San Francisco. It sits inside a sealed audio recording that a retired detective says belongs to a future trial. It exists somewhere in the 40 days of forensic work done on a vehicle that has since been returned. Nancy Guthrie deserves to be found. She deserves a full and public answer. And the sequence of events surrounding her disappearance demands one. Subscribe to Against Crime TV and turn on notifications. The moment this case breaks, you will be the first to know exactly what it means. One final question before you go. If you were Nancy, would you have said yes to the loan? Leave your answer below. I read every single one.